A 10-year-old picked Charmander, walked into Pewter City confident, and walked out having lost to a rock snake. That first defeat wasn't bad luck, it was the exact moment Pokemon decided you needed to feel small before it let you feel powerful. Every gym leader after that one has been trying to recreate that same gut punch, just with better outfits. Brock. For a game that hands you a starter Pokemon and tells you good luck, the first real gut punch comes in a dim little gym in Pewter City. Brock is not supposed to be the hard part. Everyone who has finished the game will tell you that. But ask the 9-year-old who picked Charmander and walked in with a fire type at level 12 and you get a very different story. Onix has a 160 base defense. That number does not mean much until you are watching Ember bounce off it like a pebble off a tank. Brock exists because Pokemon needed to teach a lesson before it let you keep playing, and Onix was the exam. Rock and ground moves shrug off fire and normal attacks. Screech drops your defense while Bide sits there charging like a bomb with no visible timer. And Tackle keeps chipping away until your health bar is a rumor. Players have documented entire runs stalling out here for hours, grinding Pidgey and Retier just to survive one gym leader in a stone floor arena in a town most players forget the name of the moment they leave it. That is the whole point. Brock is not difficult by accident. Every piece of his kit punishes you specifically for not knowing yet that this game has rules, and those rules do not care how excited you are to be playing it. Squirtle walks through him, Bulbasaur barely notices he exists, Charmander gets sent home crying, and that split is not a bug, it is the entire tutorial. Veterans call him easy because veterans already learned the lesson years ago. They forget what it felt like the first time, cornered in that gym with a starter that was never built for this fight, realizing the game was willing to let a 9-year-old lose. That memory is the actual legacy here, not the badge. Brock became a household name for reasons that have nothing to do with Defense Curl. He rode shotgun through the anime for years, turning a stone-faced gym test into one of the most recognizable faces in the franchise. But the character came second, the wall came first. And a wall only works until you understand it. The very next test was not built to teach you the rules. It was built for players who thought they already knew them. Misty. 9-year-olds who survived Brock walked into Cerulean City confident. That confidence lasted about one turn. Misty's Starmie is the reason. It's fast, it hits hard, and if you rolled into that gym without an electric type or a grass type sitting in your party, you were watching your starter get cycled through Water Gun after Water Gun with no good answer. Every attempt ended the same way. Brock taught you that the game could say no. Misty taught you it could say no faster than you could react before you'd even settled on a plan. That's the surface story, a difficulty spike, a second wall right after the first one. The more interesting part is what happened to her outside the battle itself. Long after that gym stopped mattering, Misty didn't stay a gym leader. You fought once and forgot. She became one of Ash's original traveling companions, arguing with him constantly, dragging her bike grudge across regions like it owed her money, showing up in more episodes than most Kanto leaders get lines of dialogue combined. Her Starmie earned the respect, her personality earned the memory. Very few leaders in the entire franchise can say both things happened to them at once, and Misty can say it without blinking. And that split is exactly the tension worth sitting with. Ask fans which Kanto leader they remember better, and you'll get a real argument, not a shrug and a change of subject. Some go Brock, purely because he's the first badge, the first wall, the one burned into memory just for being first. Others go Misty because she's simply more fun to think about, more present, more of an actual character instead of a boss fight with a gym stapled on top. There's no hard data settling this one, it's vibes, plain and simple, and the vibes are split right down the middle. What matters is that the split exists at all. A kid who lost to Onix walked away remembering a lesson about preparation. A kid who lost to Starmie walked away remembering a person, a personality, a face they'd see again 100 episodes later, still arguing about that bike. The wall was already starting to wear a name tag. Kanto's walls at least played fair. The next region built a wall out of a single farm animal so stubborn that grown adults still complain about it decades later. Whitney. A single cow ended more childhood win streaks than any Elite Four member ever managed, and she did it with a move that just hits harder the longer you let it run. That is not an exaggeration for effect. Whitney's Miltank has a legitimate claim to being the single most feared Pokemon in the franchise's early history, and she earns that reputation as the third gym leader you meet in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, standing between you and your fourth badge in Goldenrod City. On paper, she looks harmless. Normal type, one signature Pokemon, no gimmick region hazard to solve. The surface read is a friendly cheerleader with a farm animal. Then rollout starts snowballing, and the friendly cheerleader turns into a nightmare that keeps a 9-year-old staring at a game over screen, wondering what they did wrong. Rollout is the whole story. The move gets stronger every single turn it connects, and Miltank's stat spread lets it survive long enough to ramp that damage into absurd territory. Add Stomp with its flinch chance, add a healing item to stall out any progress you make, and you get a Pokemon that punishes players for not knowing the specific counter going in blind. Normal type coverage is thin at that point in the game too. Most starters and early catches have no clean resistance to lean on, so the fight becomes a math problem disguised as a battle, and most kids did not have the math. Decades later, people who cannot remember their childhood phone number can still recite exactly how Miltank wrecked their first playthrough. That is not normal for a video game side character. That is a shared scar. The debate never really settled. Some players call the fight flatly unfair, a stat and move combination the game never properly warns you about. Others call it the first real strategy check the series ever gave you, a deliberate wall built to teach preparation before the stakes got higher. But look at what actually got built here though. Rollout's compounding damage was not an accident, and neither was pairing it with a Pokemon bulky enough to let that snowball finish rolling. That is a fight engineered to punish you specifically for walking in unprepared, which makes it less a glitch in the difficulty curve and more the curve's entire thesis statement. Whitney herself barely factors into any of it. Ask someone what she says, what she wants, why she runs a gym at all, and you get silence. Ask about the cow, and you get a war story. The wall did its job so completely that the person holding the wall almost disappeared behind it. That kind of brutal wall was the whole identity of an early leader for years. So watch what happens when the next region's opening act tries to be a challenge and a lesson at the same time, and quietly starts leaning on something other than being hard. Roxanne. Roxanne is a school teacher who moonlights as a gym leader, and that sentence alone should not feel strange, except it completely rewrites what a gym leader is allowed to be. Brock never had a job title. He had rocks, a gym, and a stare that dared you to underestimate him. Roxanne shows up in Rustboro City with the exact same rock, hard curriculum, the same first boss placement, the same job of teaching a 9-year-old that Pokemon has zero interest in letting you win by accident. Geodude and Nosepass are still built to punish anyone who walked in swinging water or grass without checking a type chart first. That part of the test never changed, not one bit. What changed is that the game actually stops to tell you who is administering it. Roxanne teaches. That is not flavor text. That is the entire frame. She talks about her students, about lessons, about wanting to see how much trainers have learned before they ever get to her. Suddenly the gym is not just a wall built out of rock types, it is a classroom, and you are not just fighting a boss, you are being graded by someone who has an actual stake in whether you pass. Brock existed to be beaten. Roxanne exists to evaluate you, and that is a completely different relationship for a 10-year-old to process, while their starter is getting bodied by a Pokemon with a defense stat that feels personally vindictive. Haynes builds its entire gym order around this same instinct. Where Kanto threw its early routes together almost carelessly, Rustboro's placement, Roxanna's rock typing, and her teaching identity all work as a matched set. A deliberate first lesson instead of a random first obstacle. The wall is still a wall. It just comes with a syllabus now. And yes, history has not been kind to her for it. Roxanne rarely shows up in anyone's list of favorite hand leaders, quietly buried under names with better hair and bigger set pieces. That is not really her failure. It is the cost of being the first one to try something new right before the games figure out how much further that idea could actually go. She proved a leader could have a job. She just was not the one who got to prove a job could become a personality. Once a leader can have a job, the games realize the job could become the whole personality. Not a hobby bolted onto a typing, not a costume over a stat block, but the actual engine driving who they are. The next one does not just teach a type, he practically wires his entire character into the theme of his city. Watson. Watson laughs like a mad scientist and dresses like one too, and that costume choice tells you exactly what Mobile City decided mattered most about him. He is not just an electric type specialist, he is a walking theme park attraction, and the gym around him is built to match that energy. Where the previous leader gave you a rock-hard obstacle wrapped in a classroom setting, Watson gives you exposed wiring, generator hums, and a personality that feels plugged straight into the city's power grid. The official red is simple. Third gym, electric types, punishes anyone still leaning on the water. Type they used to steamroll the leader before him. That part checks out in battle, bring careless water types into Mobile, and static and paralysis will wreck a run that felt completely unstoppable one gym ago. But the battle is not what people remember first. Ask anyone about Watson, and they mention the cackling laugh before they mention a single Pokemon on his team. They mention the goggles. They mention the vibe of an eccentric engineer who seems more interested in showing off his city's power supply than actually beating you. The gym itself reinforces it, all humming machinery and industrial catwalks dropped into a region otherwise covered in ocean and jungle and volcano rock, like someone built a power plant in the middle of a nature documentary. That is the inversion worth sitting with. A few gyms ago, the fight was so brutal it swallowed the person whole, a kid staring down an unbeatable wall and barely registering who stood behind it. Now the person is swallowing the fight instead. Some fans will tell you Watson is more fun to think about than he ever was to actually battle, and that is not really a knock. It is the format changing shape in real time, right in front of you. Nobody walked out of Mauville traumatized the way they walked out of that rock-type gym before it. Nobody talks about losing to Watson. They talk about the laugh, the goggles, the sheer commitment to being Electricity's biggest fan. The theme did not decorate the leader anymore. The theme became the leader, machinery and mischief poured into one character until the actual Pokemon battle felt almost secondary to the performance surrounding it. That is a strange trade to make with a kid who came here to prove something. The fight used to be the whole point. The thing you either survived or you didn't. Now, the thing you carry out the door is a costume and a laugh track, and if a leader can already outshine the fight with nothing but a theme and a personality, the next move was obvious. Give one of them something no gimmick can match. Give one of them a story that did not start the day you walked in, but decades before you were even born. Rourke. Nobody remembers Rourke for the fight. That alone should tell you something has changed. He is Sinnoh's first gym leader, the exact slot Kanto used for Brock in a Boulder badge that tested whether you understood type advantages at all. Rock types, first badge, teaching wheel. That job description has not moved in 3 generations of games. What moved is everything sitting on top of it. Rourke is Byron's son. Byron runs Canaleva's gym later in the same region, also steel types, also a man who talks like he has dirt permanently under his fingernails. That is not a coincidence the writers left lying around. It is a family business, and Rourke is the starter branch of it. 2 gyms, 2 rock-adjacent typings, 1 bloodline running underneath both of them like a seam of ore nobody bothered to hide. His gym in Orberg sits on top of an actual mining town. Conveyor belts and excavation gear built into the arena like the whole building is still on shift. Walk through it, and you are not solving a puzzle, you are walking through the family trade. Onyx, Cranidos, Geodude, all of it staged like inherited equipment rather than a random rock-type roster somebody assembled that morning. Even the battlefield reads like a resume passed down at the dinner table. Follow that pattern, and it stops looking accidental. Sinnoh could have given its first leader a job title and nothing else, the way the series had for years. Plenty of leaders before him got exactly that and nothing more. Instead, it gave him a father working the same stone 2 towns over, which means the very first gym you walk into already has a family history baked into the concrete before you've even earned a single badge. That 9-year-old getting walled by an Onix back in Kanto never needed to know who trained that Onix or why. The mystery wasn't part of the design. Rourke's kid trainers get an answer whether they ask for it or not, a name, a hometown, a father 2 gyms down the road. The difficulty check is still technically there, it just stopped being the point. A bloodline ties a leader to the past, but the next region did something colder and more modern. It stopped hiding that these people are basically the region's economy in human form, a boss in every sense of the word. Clay. Clay doesn't run a gym, he runs a city, and the gym just happens to be the part you're allowed to see. That's not an insult, it's the entire point of him. Walk into Driftvale, and you don't meet a trainer who happens to like ground types. You meet a boss. A rugged, cigar-chewing, deal-cutting mining boss who talks about badges the same way he'd talk about a shipment coming in late. He's the 5th leader you fight in Black and White, and by that point you'd think the game would be leaning harder into type gimmicks or battle puzzles. Instead, it leans into his job. Driftvale is Unova's industrial city, all bridges and cargo and construction, and Clay is what that city looks like wearing a person's face. Ground type is not a flavor choice here, it's a job description, digging, mining, moving earth for profit. All of it lines up with a man whose entire personality is labor, has a boss, and I am him. His gym battle almost reads as incidental, something you do on your way to the actual point of him, which is standing around Driftvale like he owns the drawbridge. Sometimes he basically does. That's the escalation nobody clocks while they're playing. Rourke gave you a leader whose identity came from his father's fossils, inherited lore bolted onto a battle. Clay skips inheritance entirely and gives you a leader whose identity is his literal function in the regional economy. He's not descended from something important. He is something important, structurally, to how Unova moves resources around. The gym stops being a checkpoint and starts feeling like a formality you're doing before the real conversation, the one about tunnels and trade and who's actually running this town. Fans genuinely like him for it, the gruff, no-nonsense energy lands. But plenty of players will tell you, Clay feels less like a rival trainer and more like a mayor who happens to carry 6 Pokemon on him at all times, and that reaction is not really a complaint. It's a symptom. The 9-year-old getting walled by a Krokorok doesn't care about Driftvale's supply chain, but the game clearly does, and it's willing to let the fight matter less if the person matters more. If a leader can be this fully replaced by his job, the next region took that idea and pushed it somewhere stranger. Not a boss who runs a business on the side of battling you, but someone whose entire role is to watch you before the fight ever starts, clocking your every move like the battle was never really the point to begin with. Viola. A 9-year-old walks into Santa Lune Gym expecting a wall. What they get is a photo shoot. Viola beats you with a Vivillon and a Surskit, nothing that should frighten anyone who survived Brock's Onyx. But she's not selling difficulty, she's selling an image, and she's selling it at the exact moment Pokemon needed you to notice the image more than the fight. Viola is the first gym leader in X and Y, which means she's the first thing the Kalos region hands you the second the tutorial ends. And what it hands you is a photographer, not a hiker, not a bug catcher with dirt under his nails and a grudge. A woman with a camera, framing her own gym battles like content before content was even a word anyone used for this. Her bug-type team is almost an afterthought. The identity is the camera, full stop. This is the same jump the whole franchise just made. X and Y push Pokemon into full 3D for the first time in the series' history, models rotating, camera angles sweeping through battle intros that used to be nothing more than two static sprites facing off in silence. The series stopped being a thing you played and started being a thing you watched yourself play. And the very first person to greet you in that new engine is someone whose entire personality is capturing how things look. Compare that to the wall she's replacing. Brock hit you with rock-hard type advantage and zero mercy, no exceptions, no apologies. Clay buried you under a legal cheat code disguised as a gimmick. Viola beats you with a screenshot. The threat dropped, the aesthetic rose, and the trade is sitting right there on screen the moment the game boots up. Fans still bring her up. Not because Vivillon left anyone traumatized in their sleep, but because a photographer gym leader is the kind of detail that sticks precisely when the battle doesn't. That's not an accident of memory, that's the format working exactly as designed, doing its job while nobody notices it happening. The kid who once got cornered by an Onyx and learned the game could say no to them is now getting cornered by nothing, and remembering a camera instead. Nobody's losing a badge to Viola. What they might be losing is the version of the series where simply showing up wasn't enough to be memorable, where it had to be earned with a beating first. Once the games cared this much about how a leader looked, it was only a matter of time before one leader's image became the entire selling point, marketed harder than the battle she was ever actually built for. Nessa. Nessa doesn't just have a gym. She has a stadium, packed with roaring extras, with lighting rigs and a battle that sometimes feels like the least important thing happening in it. That's not an accident, that's the whole point of her. By the time you reach Hulbury, the transformation this video has been tracking is basically complete. The wall, built to stop 9-year-olds cold, got reduced, rung by rung, into a photo opportunity with a scripted fight bolted on the side. Nessa is where that trade stops being subtle and starts being the entire pitch. She is a professional water-type battler with real credentials, verified in-game credentials, and yet the first thing anyone brings up about her is the cheekbones. The battle itself earns respect, and it's worth saying that plainly before anything else. She runs Dreadnought, an Arrowhead Pokemon with genuine Dynamax pressure, timed specifically to punish players who wander in underleveled. That part is legitimate, nobody's arguing the fight is a joke. But Galar didn't build her a quiet back room to prove any of that in. It built her a stadium with crowds, cameras, and lighting rigs because Sword and Shield decided the fight needed an audience before it needed a challenge. The marketing followed the exact same math. Nessa got trailers, official art spreads, and a level of promotional focus most gym leaders never touch in their entire existence. Her design leans hard into fashion model presentation, all sharp angles and confident posing, engineered to look good freeze-framed on a thumbnail. Players who couldn't tell you her team composition can still describe her outfit down to the sandals. That's the tension the fandom keeps circling and never quite resolves. Ask why Nessa is famous, and you'll get two answers that refuse to fully agree. One camp points to the Dynamax timing and the genuinely dangerous type coverage, the other points straight at the render, the trailers, and the sheer volume of official art. Nothing in the game settles it outright, but follow where the attention actually landed. The image did more work than the battle ever needed it to. Compare that to a kid getting stonewalled by an Onyx with nothing but grit and a type chart. That kid remembers pain. A modern player remembers a face. Both are gym leaders, technically. Only one of them needed you to lose anything at all to be unforgettable. Nessa isn't the wall's ghost anymore. She's what replaced it entirely. A battler good enough to justify the spotlight, and a spotlight bright enough that the battle almost doesn't need to be there at all. So, if a leader can become a celebrity whose fight barely matters, the newest region had to answer the oldest question in the series. With the wall long gone, what actually stops a player now? And what does that reveal about why any of us ever remembered these people in the first place? Katie. Nobody remembers what bug types Katie actually used. They remember that she smells like a bakery. That is not an accident, and it is not a coincidence. It is the entire modern design philosophy wearing an apron. Katie runs the Cortando Gym in Paldea. She specializes in bug-type Pokemon, and she is the very first gym leader you fight in Scarlet and Violet. That slot, the opening badge, used to be reserved for the cruelest walls in the franchise. Brock taught a generation patience through Onix. Whitney broke controllers with a single Miltank. The first badge was where the series decided to hurt you on purpose, early, so you'd respect it. Katie shows up to that same slot holding a tray of pastries. The contrast is the whole point. Bug types are the least intimidating type in the game, arguably in the entire franchise, and Katie leans into that instead of fighting it. She's not styled as a warrior or a scientist or a mystic. She's styled as a local business owner. Somewhere in Cortando, there's a shop with her name on it, and that detail does more character work than a stat block ever could. You walk into her gym expecting a battle. You walk out remembering a person. That's the trade the series made, and it's worth naming directly. A baker with bug catching nets is not scarier than a woman who could end a 9-year-old's Saturday with one Miltank. She was never built to be. The game stopped needing you to fear the first gym, because they figured out fear was never the thing that made you remember it. It was the sting, and stings fade. What doesn't fade is a face, a job, a shop with a name on it. Follow the whole ladder back, and it lines up perfectly. Brock was a wall. Later leaders inherited legend and mystery and reputation before you ever touched a Pokeball. Then leaders got day jobs, then leaders got public images, then leaders got treated like celebrities the town already knew and loved before you arrived. Katie is the final rung. She has no lore drop, no dark backstory, no myth. She has a bakery. And she is, badge for badge, one of the most fondly remembered first gym leaders the series has ever produced. That 9-year-old cornered by an Onix learned something true about limits, about a game that would not simply hand over a win. The player who battles Katie learns something else entirely, that the fastest way to stop someone in their tracks was never a Pokemon they couldn't beat. It's a person they can't stop thinking about. The gym never really changed, you did. And somewhere along the way, Pokemon quietly figured out that a wall only stops you once, but a person you actually like will stop you every single time you think back on the journey. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.